Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Munatones, the CEO and co-founder of KAATSU Global, and welcome to our not biannual, bi-monthly um, webinar where you can ask any questions. Um, you can either raise your hand, figuratively speaking, or use the chat function down below. Um, and I can read the question out loud and then answer the question. Um, I so the floor is yours. I'll wait 30 or 60 seconds, and if not, then uh, I can always talk about KAATSU. So I'll wait till some questions are raised. Over the last, I would say, month, we've had some very interesting questions, um, and I can go over those, you know, if you wish. We have one question. Okay. First question is, tell me about the number of cycles I should do. Okay. The the number of cycles that you do depends on what you would want to achieve. For example, are you training for a half marathon? Do you want to build muscle? Are you recovering from a injury? Is it a laceration on your skin? Is it a broken bone? Is it a torn ligament? Is it a rehab from a surgery of some sort? These will all depend on the number of cycles that we would recommend. So, in lieu of not knowing what your goal is, um, or how old you are, or how much time do you have, I'll just answer it very generically. And I use KAATSU simply for vascular elasticity. I don't use KAATSU to build muscle. I don't use it to increase stamina specifically. I don't use it to improve my balance or speed or any very specific functional strength or athletic movement. So what I do is twice a day, I jump on my KAATSU machine, and because I'm the CEO of the company, I have access to all the different types of models that we have. I'm still using our original KAATSU Nano. I still use the KAATSU 2.0. These are products that we made 8, 9, 10 years ago. Um, uh, Tonight during the World Series game against the Los Angeles Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays, for example, I will be over my parents' house and with my wife. And so there'll be four adults there, and we'll all have our KAATSU machines on. Generally, we'll do, or at least I do, 6 cycles on my arms. That takes about 40 to 42 minutes. And I don't do anything. I might be texting, I might be uh, eating, but I don't do anything specific. In other words, I don't do bicep curls. I'm not, stretching or anything. I'm just sitting there watching television, watching the game. Um, then after that's done, I'll switch the leg bands with either one of my parents or my wife, who is ever sitting next to me at the particular time, and we'll switch. Legs take a little bit longer, but I do another 6 cycles there. Um, my father, for example, he just had a golf ball sized tumor taken out of his right upper lung. He's 90 years old, and fortunately, we believe he did radiation. The tumor is decreasing in size and brightness, which is good. But he has a feeling of heaviness in his legs. We think it's because of venous insufficiency, or perhaps because the tumor was so close to his heart. There may be some impact that he had on his heart. So we're focusing with him on doing many cycles on his legs, always in low. He's sitting there watching the game. Of course, there was an 18 inning game the other day. He didn't do 18 innings of cut cycles. That would have been several hours, but he did do more than six. I would say he probably did 10 cycles on his legs as he was sitting there watching the game. Um, every now and then he gets up. I would say every 2 innings or maybe an inning and a half, just stands up, lets the enables his body to be in a different position, and then sits back down and continues with the cut cycles. I have four children. They all do KAATSU. They all do it in different ways. And in contrast to my 90-year-old father, in remission from lung cancer, I take it to my 22-year-old senior twins. They are actually at University of California, San Diego, which was the first, no, I'm sorry, it was the third university that started to use KAATSU, an athletic department, with their varsity athletes. But it was the first university who offered KAATSU to all the sports teams. I think there's 22 or 23 varsity sports, from rowing and track and field to basketball, to water polo and swimming. So they use KAATSU for performance, and recovery from games. So that's how they use it. I would say anywhere from 3 to 6 cycles uh, on your arms and your legs. I know many people focus on either their upper body or their lower body, but we strongly advocate that you do roughly half of the cycles that you do on your arms, and then the other half on your legs. If you find there's some time crunch, or you want to focus on legs, maybe do something like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday on your legs, and maybe a Tuesday, Thursday on your arms, or vice versa. If you have an injury, um, let's say you have maybe you did an operation, and they had to cut the skin, maybe you had to repair a bone or connective tissue. Um, in these cases, the number of cycles that you can do is greater. Not all day, but I would say if I had a broken finger, if I had a broken toe, I would be doing it 10 cycles, and I would focus on the extremity that the injury occurred, if it was on a limb or hand or a foot. If it was a broken rib, I would use KAATSU on the legs. I would say anything um, from the heart on down. If you have a injury to a bone, connective tissue, or skin, I would use KAATSU primarily on the legs. If it was from the heart on up, I would use KAATSU primarily on the arms. I say primarily, I'll say anywhere from 60 to 80% on the either the upper body or the lower body. If there is, let's say you had some kind of tendonitis or neuropathy, I would actually and we advocate even doing single limb KAATSU. So let's say you're a person who has a tennis elbow, or a swimmer's shoulder, or some kind of golf injury on one side or the other. I would take the number of cycles that you do, let's say there's 6, and I would simply put one band on the injured limb. Do those 6 cycles, then put the other band on. So you do a single limb KAATSU to start, and then a double limb or normal KAATSU for the remaining of the number of cycle sets that you do. Um, so your next question is probably, what is the maximum number of cycles that you do? There are people, Olympic athletes, professional athletes, performers. They could be dancers, pianists, actors, acrobats that we have, stand-up comedians, etc. And usually when they're doing KAATSU, it's out of a necessity. They may be in production, they may be in filming, they may be in television or play, or they may be in playoffs. They may have the Olympics coming up or the Olympic trials. And so they're doing many, many more cycles because they have to really, really decrease their rehabilitation and recovery time. And so they're doing KAATSU sessions maybe 3 or 4 times a day. The number of cycles that they're doing can be as easily over 20. But this is a very, very specific example, isolated, where you have a performer of some sort, musical, theatrical, television, film, or athletic, and there is a very specific goal that they have with a very specific timeline. So in these cases, and they want to rehab as quickly as possible without losing strength, then the number of cycles that they're doing is much, much greater than the average person who perhaps is not in a playoff situation, not, in a local championship or not, attempting to do a marathon run or etc. But we also have people, for example, who have personal goals. Maybe they have a TED Talk coming up. We've had people who are going to participate in a wedding, either as part of the bride or groom's side, a family member who simply wants to be as fit as possible in 6 weeks, in 6 months, whatever the situation is. So they can do more than 3 to 6 cycles a day. They can do 2 sessions a day. They can do 3 sessions a day. So I don't know the background, and I'm just giving you some generics. If you have a very specific goal in mind, if you can share your age or goal and what you like to do, because we want you to do the cycles in something that you like to do. Our family enjoys watching the Los Angeles Dodgers, so we're using this occasion to have a family gathering in front of the television, enjoying the game while we're doing KAATSU. Next question is, I purchased a KAATSU C3 more than 2.5 years ago, and I haven't yet used the system as I've been challenged to find a user manual or instructions on how to use it. Can you assist? Yes, we have a user manual. I unless you got unfortunately, the wrong package, that the quick start guide was actually in the package that it came in. If for some reason it didn't, we could easily email you out the C3 manual. So if you can send your request that you did not receive a manual in the package that it came in, I apologize. And so you can always email us at info at kaatsu.com. The next question is, for example, FYI, the chat function is disabled. I think the Q&A is what people need to use. Okay, I don't know why the chat function is disabled. Um, oh, on my side, it looks okay, but yes, you can use the Q&A, which or what people are using. Next question is, I'll be having a complete knee replacement next week. Can I use KAATSU for a recovery, and how soon after the surgery? How many sessions per day and at what level? Uh, excuse me. So yes, actually, I would be doing a bunch of KAATSU cycles, at least 6 on my arms and at least 6 on my legs. I would actually double that up to do 6 arms, 6 legs in the morning session, and at least 6 legs in the evening session. Actually, now, um, we know from our work with orthopedic surgeons outside the United States, and then also with the professional athletes, surgeons inside the United States, that prehab with cut cycles is very, very good for surgery. So everything from the University of Tokyo Hospital to the National Rehabilitation Center of Mexico to uh, hospitals in China, and then also among the knowledgeable professional orthopedic surgeons here within the United States, that prehabbing with KAATSU is very, very good for um, uh, any kind of orthopedic surgery. So I would do, let's say today is Wednesday, let's say your surgery is next Wednesday. I would be doing 2 sessions of cut cycles per day after the surgery is over, or prior to the surgery. I would inform my surgeon that you're doing KAATSU and you have been doing KAATSU. He or she may not be aware of KAATSU. If not, we we can send them a variety of information, or you can send them a variety of information. The variety of information spans its use in orthopedic recovery for orthopedic surgeries, um, muscular or scalar or connect tissue issues. Um, just email us at info@kaatsu.com, and we can send you that information. How soon after surgery? Depending on the surgeon, um, we have people in VA hospitals. We have people who are get discharged from the hospital that day or the next day, starting KAATSU. Um, if they are a little bit nervous about doing KAATSU on the limb where they had the cuts, I'm sorry, where they had the surgery, that's perfectly normal. It's understandable. You can do KAATSU on the other 3 limbs. That's not a problem. It's actually also very helpful. If you have any complications due to the surgery, obviously that changes the equation. And in these particular cases, we always defer to your surgeon. And you know, in general, maybe you want to wait for 72 hours. That's sort of the standard waiting period to see if there's any complications. And that comes from all the decades of use in Japan and in other countries. And after 72 hours, um, you can start doing it yourself. You can inform or you should inform your physical therapist that you're doing this. He or she can give you different exercises, or they will give you different exercises and movements that you can do post-surgery, and you could do all of those with your KAATSU on. How many sessions per day? I know in the case of both my parents, who've had knee replacements and a hip surgery in one case, and they again, because they're older, but anybody over the age of 50 should always, always, always start at low pressure. I know many people believe that medium or high is appropriate for them. I understand that. But our strongest recommendations are to put the bands on with a 1 finger tightness and start at low. It's the goal of KAATSU isn't what you feel. The goal of KAATSU at one level is actually to create an elasticity of your vascular tissue. So we can't feel our capillaries, veins, or arteries. We can feel sort of the pump, and I know some people like medium and high and higher than high on the custom level, but in reality, especially for recovery from a surgery, we always want you to start at low pressure. We want the skin to be pink or rosy, or even a reddish tone to it. And that is what KAATSU equipment and protocols were designed to do. Create that dilation of the veins, create the pinkness, the rosiness in the arms and legs. Um, Again, because you have a complete knee replacement coming up, and just do the cycles over and over again. If after, I would say, three low pressure cut cycles, if you want to increase at that point, then you always make sure you have very fast capillary refill time. You simply put a forefinger or thumb into your thigh, or you can put it in your calf. Just press it very firmly and then release. And when you release, that blood should come back to your skin within 2 seconds. So 2 seconds meaning 1001, 1002. If when you press and release and that white spot stays for 3 or more seconds, as in 1001, 1002, 1003, and it's still white, take the bands off because they're on too tight or you've put the pressure on uh, too strongly. And again, everybody is different. It's sort of the size of your thighs, the size of your the tightness, the manual tightness you have on. And in that case, you can undo it, make it a little bit looser, and then try again. Put your forefinger or thumb into your thigh, your upper thigh, or your calf, press and release, and almost assuredly that capillary refill time will be faster, as in 1001, 1002, not 1001, 1002, 1003, or more. Um, and thereafter, if you want to increase the pressure after the low pressure, that's okay. Again, you always want to check that capillary refill time is quick. If it's very quick, as in you press, release, and it almost immediately comes back, that's very, very good. You're that means that the blood is engorging into the small capillaries, and that's what we want to see. Next question is the C3 system. I've searched your website on the internet to find this information, has so far been unsuccessful in doing so. I think the question is, I searched your website for the C3 user manual and yet to have yet to find this on the internet. Yes, you won't find the C3 manual on the internet. The C3 manual is, well, in everybody's case, but yours, unfortunately, and I apologize for that. The manual comes in the box. And in your case, please send us an email at info@kaatsu.com and we will email you out the C3 information manual. The next question is, at what age can we use KAATSU? So in Japan, under experienced experienced practitioners, and in Japan, China, Mexico, European countries, and 70 countries, we do have a lot of healthcare professionals, either medical physicians or licensed physical therapists using KAATSU. They could use it at whatever age. Now, for consumers who don't have that medical training and medical education, we recommend 14 years and above. And the reason why is when we first started KAATSU, at least here in the United States, we had parents, mostly fathers, buying KAATSU for their young children, younger than 12. And we found that the fathers were using the cuts constant mode and really pushing their kids very hard in order to improve their athletic performance. Exactly what we did not want to see, and exactly what is a prime example of an inappropriate use of KAATSU. And so we made a change, corporate policy change, that if a consumer buys it for their child, that child should be 14 years and above. And why 14? It's because at that point, a 14-year-old, generally let's say a freshman in high school, can actually discuss with their parents and say, Dad, this is really hurting me. And we are hopeful that the father would undo the band, use the cut cycle, start at low pressure, and use KAATSU appropriately, not trying to make their son, another Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning or LeBron James or name your favorite athlete. And so 14 is the age, it's a minimum age that we recommend KAATSU is starting. And we strongly recommend if you're in high school, or i.e. a minor, and you're using KAATSU, you do exactly what the older users use. Always a cut cycle, always start at low pressure, only put the bands on with a one finger tightness, and very importantly, always check your capillary refill time. So the capillary refill time is quick, not slow. A slow capillary refill time is an indication that the CUTS bands are on too tightly and they're functioning as a blood pressure cuff or tourniquet. Now, we've specifically designed the CUTS bands, so that is a very rare occurrence. But we do know that in the early years of KAATSU Global, we had some fathers who would grab the arm of their young child and really, really tighten it so tightly that it was an unsafe situation. So 14 is the simple answer. Um, Next question is, I'm having a shoulder replacement surgery and need to know how soon to start KAATSU and where to put the bands. Will it heal my shoulder if they're on the legs or one arm? What type of exercise to do? Okay, there's several questions there. Whether you have a shoulder replacement surgery or a knee replacement surgery, it's the same fundamental principles. A, start if you have the KAATSU unit and you know your surgery is scheduled in, somewhere in advance, a month, a week, whatever it is, start doing KAATSU cycles now. I would do 2 sessions per day. I would do the upper arm and lower upper arm. Use it on the upper arms and upper legs. So start with the arms and then do the legs. If you're in such pain that doing any kind of movement on your injured arm is just out of the question, then yes, only use it on one arm, the arm that you can reasonably put the band on, and your legs. If you have a shoulder replacement surgery, one of the very good exercises that you can do to prehab is put the COTS bands on your legs. Make sure that you're sitting down when you put the COTS bands on your legs. Tighten the bands to a one finger pressure. Use the COTS cycle. Make sure you're well hydrated, and then go for a walk. Not a power walk, not a jog, not something extremely vigorous or intense or strenuous, but a comfortable pace jog. Imagine walking your dog. Imagine walking along the seashore or in the forest, just enjoying nature, enjoying the outdoors and the fresh air, walking naturally. Why would it help on your legs? Your legs have a lot more musculature, a lot more vasculature, a lot more. And so what you're doing is you're creating blood. The blood is going into your leg normally, and then it's being slowed down coming back. So when the bands are inflated, the girth of your legs, I'm sorry, the girth of the bands becomes tighter, and then the blood coming back up from your feet to your torso is slowed down because you've got this damming effect. That's all good. The magic happens is when after 30 seconds, the bands release. So the bands are tightened for 30 seconds and then release for 5. Tighten for 30, release for 5. When I say the magic happened is when you tighten the bands and the blood is slowed down, we call it modified, then there's a lot of blood in the capillaries. Your legs and your calves and your thighs get pink, pink with blood. And then all of a sudden, after 30 seconds, the bands are released. It is like you opened up the dam. And when the dam is opened up, the blood comes flowing back to your torso quickly. Now, what happens is when that blood, let's say this is your vein, and that blood is going back up your leg through your, I'm sorry, it's coming back up, fighting gravity against that artery, against all the thousands of miles of capillaries that you have. It's a fluid. Your blood is a fluid, and the fluid is going against the walls of your vascular system. When that blood is going through, that causes that's what we call shear stress. Just like imagine a water flushing through a fire hose once the firemen turn on the fire hydrant. It's just flushing there. That water against the fire hose or the blood against the vascular walls is creating shear stress. And that shear stress is kicking off nitric oxide, vascular endothelial cells. You don't need to remember those terms, but those are things that help the elasticity of the vascular tissue improve. Now, it doesn't just happen in that particular limb. It happens all over the body. In addition, and this is also very important, so you've got this shear stress that creates this biological phenomenon. In addition, when the blood is slowed down in the limb, it is also leading to a process called angiogenesis, or the creation of new blood vessels, primarily capillaries. And that is an excellent healing process that you want to incur. So even though your problem and the shoulder replacement surgery will correct that problem, you can use the bands on your legs or your other arm, create this shear stress, create this angiogenesis that will actually help the healing process. And so, like the previous uh, questionnaire I'm sorry, individual who had asked the question about the knee replacement surgery, on the shoulder replacement surgery, do it as soon as you can. I would do 2 sessions a day. If you're nervous or your doctor doesn't want you to move an arm at all, avoid that arm, avoid that leg. Um, and then after the surgery, obviously inform the surgeon of your KAATSU usage. Most surgeons will not know what KAATSU is. If they, which they normally do, if they say, "Doctor, I'm using KAATSU. How soon can I use it?" The doctor will Google KAATSU, and inevitably it'll come up as BFR. The doctor will read, and he'll see this tourniquet device, and he'll say, "No, don't use that." Or, "Oh, I heard about it, but," and then he or she will make some explanation why you shouldn't use it. Because of something they read about a blood pressure cuff that's very wide that actually partially occludes or cuts off blood supply to the limb. That's not what KAATSU does. So it's always better if you are a KAATSU user and you have the equipment, take the equipment in to show your physician and actually show him or her how you use it. Most surgeons, when they see a band around a limb, their first inclination is almost always, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Don't put a blood pressure cuff on you." The second thing is if they can get over that, they will actually then show them your hand. in the case of a shoulder surgery, or or your feet or your calves at least in the case of a knee surgery with the bands on. They'll see your veins being dilated. They'll see your palm or your calves pink, and it won't make any sense to them. They'll go, it doesn't make any sense. You have this tourniquet that's cutting off blood supply. So why is your hand pink? If they have a pulse oximeter, something that looks like this, they can put it on your finger and then read that you have blood flow in your fingertips. And again, they'll be quite shocked. They'll say, well, wait, you have a tourniquet on your arm, but you've got adequate and actually more than adequate blood flow in your hands. It just doesn't make any sense until if you have time and courage, actually, to explain that the cuff is not a blood pressure cuff. It's not a tourniquet. It's KAATSU that is allowing engorgement of blood in the limb, and then it's released every 30 seconds, and then that creates a blood flow back, creating a shear stress against the vascular walls, leading to nitric oxide, vascular endothelial cells, a healing process that is enhanced. I know that's a lot um, to master, but that's exactly what I did to my own cardiologist. That's exactly the explanation I had to my children's orthopedic surgeons when my son broke his humerus and his wrist. And so again, when I go in to a hospital with my children or friends or family who use KAATSU, I always bring in my own pulse oximeter. And then when I am with the doctor, I actually explain this phenomenon. And then it's like we're shining light, and they go, oh, that makes sense. Actually, that sounds really good. And so that gives their license or their permission to do KAATSU. To answer your question, if there's no complications, start 72 hours afterwards. If you want to avoid the limb that we had surgery, not a problem. Use it on the other three limbs. Um, Another question is, I didn't ask the question, but here's where I am. 52-year-old female that wants to build muscle. My availability is 30 minutes 3 times a day. Okay, I think this question comes from the person who had the KAATSU C3. Um, and I sort of recognize this question. So the easiest thing to do for 30 minutes 3 times a day, and depending on where you want to build muscle, you can, if you want to build muscle on your arms, if you want to build muscles on your legs, you could do so very easily by putting bands on your arms, doing the KAATSU cycle, and simply doing bicep curls slowly, slowly while you're contracting the muscle. So I'll take my jacket off. So in other words, I can do a bicep curl. Uh, Again, I'm not I don't lift weights, but let me see. So this is my arm. I could do a bicep curl, and it just back and forth. I don't have my KAATSU bands on, but here we are. I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. Now, with KAATSU bands, in order to build muscle, what we recommend you do is tighten your muscle and then move your muscle slowly up and slowly down. Now you see there's a big difference between just moving the arm, which is okay, perfectly okay. But in your case, you wanted to build muscle. So we recommend that you move your arm slowly up as you're contracting your muscle. So um, tighten your wrist. I'm sorry, tighten your hand, clench your hand, put a little grit into it, and then with the bands, go up and down. Now, that's for the top of your arm. For the lower part of your arm, again, let's see, how do I show this? You want to, uh, I don't know how to do this, but again, with a band around your arm, you want to extend your arm slowly and just back and forth, back and forth. So you're actually using that part of the muscle. So slowly and really feel it. And then you'll be able to develop muscle there. If you would like to go for a walk, you could still work on your upper body. So put the bands on your legs while you're sitting down, one finger tightness. You don't even have to go outside your house. You could be walking back and forth in your house, as I sometimes do if it's raining or if it's late at night or early in the morning. And as I'm walking with the KAATSU bands on the legs, I'm moving my arms. Now, you don't always have to move your arms. You can actually press your hands together, release, press, release. And even if you do that now without the KAATSU bands on and you press, you can feel the pressure on the muscles of your upper shoulder, so your deltoids. You can feel it in your trapezoids that are these rectangular or triangular muscles here, and you can feel it across your chest as well as your arms. So sort of in the prayer position, push, release, push, release, push, release. In addition, you can clasp your hands together, pull and release, pull and release. You can put your hands against the wall or against your sofa, chair, table, and do sort of standing at an angle push-ups. Again, slow is better. Slow is better if you want to build muscle. That's for your upper body. Um, in the lower body, you can do anything, everything from heel raises, some squats, and the easiest thing to do, frankly, is just KAATSU walking. If you want to work on your core, I recommend that you put the bands on your legs, stand on one foot, balance for as long as you can, and then balance on your other foot. Repeat that back and forth, and you will feel the tightening of your core from your abdominals and lower back. Um, there are a lot more exercises and explanations in our KAATSU 101 course. Because you bought the KAATSU C3, you and every other customer we have has full access to our online course. It's called KAATSU 101. We do have additional online offerings. They cost additional. They were developed by a variety of different doctors of physical therapy and trainers who are very knowledgeable KAATSU users. So they have on those for pay processes, they actually have um, hundreds of exercises. And of course, you can go to our YouTube channel, and our YouTube channel is found at the bottom of our website. There's a YouTube icon. Click on that, and you could see a whole year of exercises that a KAATSU master specialist, Lauren Cousins, did. And we still have it online. It's still available to watch for free. What benefits are there when you're just sitting? The benefits of KAATSU come whether you're sitting, standing, running, jumping, whatever. And that comes from when the bands are inflated, it causes an engorgement of blood in the limbs. That leads to angiogenesis, the creation of new capillaries in the body. And then when the bands are released, you've got this shear stress going against the walls of the vascular tissue. And that's leading to a production of a variety of molecules that allow your vascular tissue to be more elastic. And that, frankly, is a form of exercise, widely defined. So quite often we think of exercise as simply moving our limbs. In fact, our body is moving ubiquitously all the time, all over our body, even when we're sleeping. The magic of KAATSU, or the benefits of KAATSU more appropriately, are we're damming up or we're modifying the blood flow as we're sitting, and that is actually creating a variety of different processes in the limbs that is the metabolic equivalent of exercise. And when I say the metabolic equivalent of exercise, I actually literally mean it. We've proved it by what we do is we've taken blood vials of myself and many, many volunteers, taken the vials of blood from individuals before KAATSU, had them sit down, then do the KAATSU cycle. They're not doing push-ups, they're not doing burpees, they're not going for a run, they're just sitting there. Then we take a vial of blood after that KAATSU cycle session and we compare the two. If KAATSU did nothing, then the biomarkers and proteins, metabolites that we found before KAATSU should be the same as what we found after KAATSU. But they're dramatically different, dramatically different. And that was the beauty of Dr. Sato's invention that he made way back in 1966, and we only brought to the United States and outside of Japan in the year 2001. And so what he learned way back then is that there were a variety of things that were produced by just sitting and doing this cut cycle program: ceramides, plasmalogens, beta endorphins, C-reactive protein, and the list goes on and on. Now, when we tested at the Buck Institute in Northern California, we only tested for 380 different types of biomarkers. Now, there's many, many more, but that's what we tested. And so these included from testosterone to, um, uh, gosh, uh, adrenaline, etc. So benefits of cot sitting, which I do every single day, at least twice a day, is getting the modification of blood flow, of course, engorging the limbs in blood, then modifying the blood flow, creating shear stress, and that leads to a catalyst of other changes in the body. Next question is, 58 years old. I've been weight training for over 20 years, as well as a lot of walking and yoga. I want to maintain and possibly grow muscle. Recently received my KAATSU B2. How often should I use it? I currently use it on my morning walk about 2 miles and two more times, 5 cycles on low arms, uh, uh, 5 cycles on low arms and legs, and 6 cycles at low. I'm sorry, 5 cycles on low pressure on my arms and 6 cycles on my legs at low pressure. I alternate resistance workouts on my tonal with cycle mode workouts with KAATSU and tonal with much lower weight. Is there anything different I should do? Um, at the age of 58, and you want to grow muscle, not only maintain muscle, but grow muscle, I would do what we've suggested to earlier users, and that is move your muscle slowly as you're contracting the muscle, both in the eccentric and concentric directions. So in other words, when you're whatever the tonal machine is asking you to do, slow your pace down and put more effort into that movement, whether it's upwards, downwards, diagonally, whatever the program asks you to do. I would make sure that I'm very well hydrated before and during your tonal workout or your walks. Um, for your walks, that's great what you're doing. The amount of KAATSU cycles that you're doing and the pressures that you're doing it on is great, wonderful. Um, if you want to grow muscle, I would recommend three things, two primarily. One, move the muscle slowly, upwards and downwards. contract the muscle as you're doing it. You'll find it, you'll fatigue much quicker. That's okay. And when you do sets, repeated sets of whatever exercise, and since I'm sitting, it's easy to demonstrate with the bicep curls. So when you're doing set one and you reach um, failure, muscular failure, just rest for 20 seconds, no more than 20 seconds, and do it again. You should find that the number of repetitions that you do in the first set is greater than you do in the second set or the third set or the fourth set. And that is an indication that fatigue is building up. That means lactate is building up. That lactate is communicated by your central nervous system to your brain. Right behind your eyeball is a pituitary gland, and that is the gland that produces growth hormone. And that growth hormone is produced when lactate is built up in a muscle because there's trauma in their muscle. On that trauma, there's stress in the muscle, and that stress is signaled to the brain. The brain then releases growth hormone to help the body recover from that stress, overcome that stress. And so slowing down, being well hydrated, and what I mean by well hydrated, meaning that your urine should be nearly clear. If it's bright yellow, you're not well hydrated, and continue as you're doing. That sounds very good what you do, and congratulations to you. Um, Regarding the C3 system, I'm 67 years old with the goals of maintaining muscle and increasing strength and flexibility. Um, Semi-retired and I'm a recreational ballerina. Great. Um, so your goal is to maintain muscle and increase strength and flexibility. And as a ballerina, you're already strong. You've got a great sense of balance and probably an incredible amount of grace. This is like, you're like the ideal KAATSU user. You've got inherent strength, you've got incredible balance, and you've got this developed sense of grace. And so as you're doing your exercises, and you want to increase your flexibility, I would actually use the KAATSU bands in the KAATSU cycle mode as you're going through your movements. It could be your particular dance movements, it could be stretching against the bar, whatever you're doing. Do it slowly and steadily. So don't force anything, don't do anything quickly. And so you're when the muscle, whether it's an arm or a leg, when that muscle is warmed with a lot of engorged blood, then it actually has a lot of ability to lengthen, to stretch, and so that would help you. And just like the previous explanations, do everything slowly, deliberately, gradually. There's no need to do jerky movements. Next question is, I would like to use KAATSU with my wife for just walking to begin. What recommendations do you have with regard to how long the legs bands could be kept on? Okay, so great. When we talk about KAATSU, and we all live busy lives, we all have things we have to do, and you all have things we want to do. So we've got 24 hours in a day. So how can we be as efficient as we can in an enjoyable manner? Walking with KAATSU is a wonderful way to be efficient and effective. Why? Because again, there are many more, there's a lot more muscle and a lot more um, uh, kilometers of or miles of vascular tissue in our legs versus our arms. And walking is a natural human movement, and you don't have to go fast with the KAATSU on. So what I would do is I would sit down before I go to the walk, put the bands on at a one finger tightness, so they're angled up along your groin. And I would do at least one, preferably two or three KAATSU cycles before I went on the walk. I would do that. And then, this is very important, retighten the bands. So you manually tighten the bands to one finger tightness. You do one, two, or three KAATSU cycle sets, and then you'll find, this is an interesting phenomenon of KAATSU, you can manually retighten the bands slightly more. And I would recommend that you do that slightly more. And why does that happen? It happens because the the physiology of the human leg, when the vascular tissue becomes more elastic, the leg becomes relaxed. When the leg becomes relaxed and the vascular tissue becomes more elastic, we can actually apply more compression to it, but the blood flow and blood circulation continues and it's actually improved. So uh, instead of what many people do is they put the cot bands on while they're standing up. And when you stand up, the girth of your leg is larger. And even if you tighten it, once you start walking a great distance, that um, tightness isn't taut, it isn't snug, and it can fall down your leg. So put on the cot bands on your legs to one finger tightness, to one, two, or three cut cycles as you're sitting or stretching or preparing for your walk. Then re-tighten the band and just an incremental increase in tightness. And then you go out and you go for your walk. Start off on a low pressure setting. That's all you need to do. Don't push it. Don't worry about it. Don't just enjoy the walk at a comfortable pace. If you ever get lightheaded in some way or you ever feel uncomfortable, and some even Olympic and professional athletes can get uncomfortable doing casual KAATSU walking at high altitude or when they're not well hydrated. Or let's say they did something else and then did KAATSU walking. That KAATSU walking is a huge draw on your energy reserves, a huge draw. And so we want to be relaxed, we want to be gentle, we want to be conservative when we go on that KAATSU walk. We do want you to feel it. You will feel your legs getting that workout feeling as you walk. And if you do it for 10 minutes the first day, perfect. You don't need to overdo it. Carry, if necessary, take off the bands and carry it the rest of the way. If you want to build up your low upper body as you're walking, you can actually do, exaggerated arm swings. You can actually have two tennis balls in your hand and just, squeeze them. You can have a water bottle in your hand and squeeze the water bottle in one hand 10 times and then the squeeze with the other hand 10 times. You can do a variety of exercises. I don't know, every half a mile, just sit and stretch. Uh, do some breathing exercises. And so if you do all that, um, I would not walk initially more than 10 to 15 minutes during the first week of KAATSU walking. And then every subsequent after that, I would just gradually increase. Because you're doing the KAATSU cycle, um, going out for a 1 hour walk, let's say within 2 months, is quite doable, and you'll be amazed um, with the overall cardiovascular improvements that you will achieve if you gradually increase. Everything with KAATSU, it has been done with thoughtfulness, no need to rush things, and just do a gradually step up of your program. Um, the next question is, can I use for a 12-year-old boy for muscle building and strength? We don't recommend it. I guess you can if your own son and um, you are an experienced KAATSU user. But to be honest, 12-year-old boys, they're little hormone machines. Um, and KAATSU is really kickstarting your human growth hormone. But at 12 years old, his body is producing so many uh, human growth hormone anyway. Um, uh, you know, he could do push-ups. He could do any kind of functional movement. That includes just running around like little boys of my era used to do. Most of the boys I grew up, we played flag football. We went to the playground and did basketball. We rode our bikes and we challenged each other to arm wrestling and all kinds of how far can you throw a rock? All kinds of things. I live in a neighborhood very close to elementary school, and I don't see the kids doing much more than riding their e-bikes and playing their computer games. Yes, there are athletes who do work out, but you can use it if you're your son and you're an experienced user, but we don't recommend it. Um, we believe it's unnecessary. Um, but if you, as your parent, want to build some muscle out with him, I would recommend him doing it in a functional manner. Let's say if he likes baseball, putting the bands on and just taking some swings. If he enjoys playing frisbee or shooting basketball hoops, doing that. There's no need for him at this age to be lifting weights. Although I know 12-year-olds who specialize in sports tend to want to start lifting weights earlier than necessary. But if you look back and at all the great athletes of all time, in previous generations, they were not doing, they weren't in the weight room um, pumping iron at the age of 12. Later, yes. High school years, yes. So 14 and on, not a problem. But if it's your son and your experience, you can. Next question is there an instructor available by Zoom for a new user who is completely unfamiliar with KAATSU? Yes, there is. On the KAATSU website, let's see, what is the link? If you go to kaatsu.com, I'm just looking at myself here. Uh, and then you go to, off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact link. So I'm getting it here. If you go to kaatsu.com and you go to support, so up on the top row, there is kaatsu.com, and then go to support. Under general support, you go all the way down to one-on-one personal session. And then on one-on-one personal session, it's got uh, Kenzie Atkins, a young woman in the Midwest, Mark Kawabe, Dr. Corey Kern, Dr. Susie Lachowski, Dr. Patrick Edgecombe, and Robert Heideck. And you can just click on each of their names and then set an appointment. And um, they're all very accomplished individuals with good knowledge of KAATSU. So yes, the answer is yes there. And let me get back to the questions. Um, the next question is, can you cycle your arms and legs simultaneously? Um, I guess you can, but that is one of the very strict do not do ever rules and principles of KAATSU. And the reason why we don't want you to use KAATSU bands on your arms and legs simultaneously is just imagine you have engorged an arm, another arm, a leg, and the other leg in blood. Um, and we only have a finite amount of blood in our body. And if an extra amount of blood is in our two arms and two legs, then a lesser amount of blood is in our head. And I remember many years ago, is probably 10, 11, 12 years ago in Park City, Utah, with a two doctors on staff. They professed to be knowledgeable of KAATSU, and they put on the bands on both their arms and legs. Again, they're at Park City, Utah. It's at altitude. And I said, please don't do that. They said, no, we have professional athletes here and they're under our care. I said, okay, but please, you're at altitude. They've been working out. I saw they were lacking in being fully hydrated. They had bands on their arms and legs, and they were being asked to do burpees. And I just said to myself, I hope this is a perfect storm for for problems. They probably did no more than 5 burpees. And what happens was um, the first professional athlete left the room, ran to the restroom. Soon thereafter, the others did the same. They were puking, throwing up, they were lightheaded, and they had all the symptoms that I knew that would occur. And it was a very good lesson that even uh, highly paid professional athletes, especially at altitude, especially after a hard workout, doing KAATSU on their upper arms, upper legs, would lead to problems, nausea, lightheadedness, and just imagine us who are not professional, well-trained young athletes doing the same. Last thing that we want to see is someone get lightheaded, fall over in a weight room, and hit their head on some iron. So please don't use KAATSU on your arms and legs simultaneously. Uh, we're about a third of the way of the questions. And so it's been about an hour. I will continue. I will continue all day long, but this um, this webinar is recorded, and so we're about an hour and 5 minutes into the webinar, and it just I'll continue. And so if you have to leave or you left, we're at the 1 hour and 5 minute mark, more or less, right now. Next question is, I've been using COTS bands for 12 months without issue. I just received a heart pacemaker. Is it safe to continue the KAATSU bands? In any case with anybody with a cardiac issue, we always say, please discuss with your cardiologist. And just like with the orthopedic surgeon, most cardiologists outside of Japan and China have no idea in Switzerland, have no idea of KAATSU. And so I would actually take in your bands and show him or her um, the equipment and how it's used. It's very important for the cardiologist to understand that KAATSU equipment is not occluding or cutting off blood supply to the arms or legs, but it's simply modifying the venous return, the return back. And so it's very gentle on the cardiovascular system. So ask and confirm with the cardiologist. They most likely will not have a clue what COTS is. We have a lot of material that a cardiologist would want to read. Send an email to info@kaats.com and we can provide you and your cardiologist the appropriate information developed by cardiologists in Japan. So in Japan, we did a test. This is where I learned KAATSU with a team of cardiologists. We tested KAATSU on over 12,000 patients over a 10-year period from 2004 to 2014. We wanted to complete that entire decade-long scientific study before we launched outside of Japan. We wanted to make sure that KAATSU was appropriate um, to be used of people from all ranges of life, from all walks of life, from all ages. And so we have that data from these 12,000 patients. And that's the kind of stuff that the cardiologists here in the United States are very or more comfortable reading and understanding. Next question. How about pressure? I can't really detect the difference between low, etc. Yes, yes. That is that is what we want to see. So, um, although we can't consciously feel the difference in pressure between low, medium, and high, although I guess if you're very, very sensitive, you could feel the pressure between low and high. But we've created the cut cycle. So it's a very, very incrementally gradual increase in pressure. So much so that we can't consciously feel it or know it or sense it, but our capillaries can. And that's why when you do the cut cycle and you look at your hand and you can just literally stare at your hand, as you go from the cut cycle, the first 30 seconds to the last 30 seconds, and then from medium on, you should be able to see a more pinkening, if that's a word, or a rosiness, a deeper hue of redness in your hands. You should see the veins of your hands pop out a little bit more as this is going on. That's really the precise precision. That's sorry, it's getting long in the day. This is my fourth KAATSU webinar of the day. So, what I meant is that we developed this product with precision in mind, so much so that it's sort of like that proverbial frog in a boiling pot of water. He doesn't feel the difference between this moment and that moment, but over time, that effect will be very apparent. So with KAATSU, we developed each iteration, each step up of the KAATS pressure to be minimal, certainly not conscious. We can't consciously aware of it. Now, when we see the effects on our hands or feel the effects as we're moving our muscle, yes, we can feel it, but we don't have any uh, way to sense what or how our vascular system is reacting to KAATSU. Um, for FYI, I have no health concerns regarding heart or any other major systems. Healthy weight and diet. Okay, this is a related question to something above. This is a question from the 58-year-old, a male who has been in weight training for over 20 years and wants to, he does walking and yoga and he wants to maintain or possibly grow muscle. And he's been using the KAATSU, in my opinion, very appropriately, very correctly, using the cut cycle sets on his morning walk about 2 miles, and then also using cut cycles on his arms and legs. And his follow-up comment was, he has no health concerns regarding his heart or any other major systems, and he eats a healthy weight. He has a healthy weight and eats a healthy diet. So um, you are doing very, very well. And like I said before, just moving the limbs, your arms or your legs more slowly as you're contracting the muscle, this would help you grow muscle. Um, Next question is, I'm relatively new to KAATSU. I am on the low setting so far, and I'm doing exercises with body blade when doing arms. Is it normal for the arms to ache? Maybe it is lactic acid, I'm not sure, but they feel achy to the point that I look forward to the end of the cycle. Yes, so we've had many professional players in NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, Olympians that have won medals, gold, silver, bronze, that they put the bands on and they do what they see as normal exercise, sometimes with no weight, and they go, how did I become exhausted? And that is one of the benefits of KAATSU. It is really an exhausting, it can be an exhausting form of exercise. We don't think it because visually we're so used to if someone has a bunch of heavy weights or a lot of resistance against them, well, okay, that makes sense that you're going to be fatiguing. But when they have these narrow bands on your arms, and I'm not familiar with body blade exercises, so I apologize there. Um, uh, we can't imagine why would our arms or legs fatigue so quickly, or feel pumped up or feel achy in your case. What you can do is simply, um, I assume you've put on the bands with the one finger tightness and unload. That's very, very good. Um, uh, Perhaps what you can do, and I need to study what body blade is. So before I'm sorry, I'm answering this question blindly, ignorantly. So uh, maybe what you can do is break up the exercises. So you're giving your body a little bit of break in between, uh, what I assume is some sort of continuous movement of some sort. So break it up, just like if I asked the track athlete to run, 2400s, it's just too much. If I ask them to run, 10 400s with an easy 400-meter run or easy 400-meter walk, recovery walk in between, then that's more reasonable. And so, but what's happening is when you build up, or when you engorge the limb in blood, what happens is the more muscle fibers, a higher percentage of muscle fibers are being activated with any given movement. So in other words, when my muscles are flushed, and they're pink and they're red, and I got all this engorgement of blood in the limb, and I'm moving my limb, whatever muscle I'm doing, I'm actually activating a greater percentage of these muscles within the greater percentage of muscle fibers within that muscle. So it's an efficient way to use your muscle. So I would just give yourself a little break within there. And if necessary, and you would like, actually, within your exercise period, actually remove the bands. Give your body a break. Going back to that analogy of, do you do 2400 sprint runs, or you do 10 with some recovery in between? In this case, I'm even suggesting, like, do three and then just recover fully. And then do three more and then recover fully. So not only do you want more rest time, but maybe you just take off the bands in the middle of your exercise. Start off in with, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes of work, then build up to 15, then 20, then 30. Again, I'm answering this question with total ignorance of body blade. Um, I'm 68. I'm a 68-year-old female. I'm trying to tone sagging skin and build muscle. Um, 68, I assumed that sagging skin would maybe be around the face, or maybe on the lower arm. Same basic principles apply. You don't need to do weights, but you can move the limb slowly. Slowly, and then contracting. And even if you don't have muscle in the beginning, you will gradually have muscle. I have more muscle now at the age of 63 than I did 25 years ago when I was in my, what is it, in my 40s. And so why? I'm just doing KAATSU every day while I'm typing typing emails or on the phone with different individuals. Um, so building the muscle, doing these very slow, methodical movements will help you build muscle, and that muscle will fill in, your skin. Now, if it's around let's say your neck, or somewhere above your shoulders, in Japan, they developed a variety of exercises. They market this, or they explain this as KAATSU beauty exercises. And again, like the United States, in Japan, most of the KAATSU users are older females, older meaning older than the age of 50. And as we know, the Japanese population is by far the oldest population in the world. And so what they do is they put the KAATSU bands on their arms. They sit down with their not slouching. They sit down, straight spine, shoulders back, and they start to explain the vowels. A, E, I, O, U. A, E, I, O, U with the bands on. This literally are exercising the muscles of the face. Also, just doing neck forwards and backwards, left and right, rotation counterclockwise and clockwise. And uh, some of the uh, KAATSU beauty clinics even have these like little toothbrushes that move, and that they're sort of doing jaw exercises. So um, those are some of the exercises you can do. If you have more questions and you wanted a, excuse me, a targeted part of the body that you want to increase the muscle and reduce your sagging skin, send that question in to KAATSU at, I'm sorry, info@kaatsu.com, and I'll take the time to answer it in more detail. Next question is, we're about halfway. I wear a continuous glucose monitor. Every 2 weeks, I remove the sensor from one arm and place the new one on the other arm for 2 weeks. Should I just not place the bands on the arm and the sensor so each arm only gets the KAATSU benefits every 2 weeks? Any issues or recommendations? No, you can actually, because you're being very bilateral about the use of KAATSU. You could, of course, you'll be doing the KAATSU on your legs, but on the upper body, just do KAATSU with one arm, single limb KAATSU. Do the same exercise with both arms. So you're exercising bilaterally, doing the same thing on both arms. You just set one arm for 2 weeks. Let's say your right arm has it on for 2 weeks, and then your left arm has the KAATSU bands on for 2 weeks. So you could do it that way. If you only did KAATSU on your right arm, then obviously more likely your right arm is going to get bigger than your left. But since you're doing 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, I'm sorry, 2 weeks left, 2 weeks right, 2 weeks left, 2 weeks right, and just place the KAATSU bands on the opposite side of your continuous glucose monitor. And of course, work on your legs and your core. Um, Next question is, our daughter has a shoulder injury, a frozen shoulder, and has had the injury for about 5 years. Would KAATSU help her? Uh, it may, there's always no guarantee, but we've had a lot of people with frozen shoulders, a lot of military veterans in particular that I have personally worked with, and this is how we enable their shoulders to gain mobility and with reduction of pain is put the bands on her arms, um, just with cycles, maybe do 2 or 3 cycles, and then have her do very simple hand clenches. Why do we want to do hand clenches? Is because then lactate starts to build up in the forearms. This forearm muscle is a lot weaker than your biceps or triceps or your legs, etc. So doing some sort of exercises, squeezing a ball, wiping a countertop with a towel, doing any kind of wrist exercises or form exercise will actually lead to a very quick buildup of lactate, which then will produce a bunch of hormones and um, other metabolites will be produced. Then whatever motion she can do, let's say I remember a helicopter pilot that I work with. Must have been 20 years ago. And what we had him do is he said, well, I can only move my arm up to, uh, let's say he can only move his arm up to here. And anything above this would either be impossible or it hurt too much to even attempt it. So we we had the bands on, and just right before that point, he put his hand down. Up to that point, put his hand down, and did that for, I don't know, 12, 15 times. Was never going to the point of pain, never going to the point of he couldn't go beyond, just right below that. Took the bands off, had the bands on his legs, um, just sitting there talking, etc. Had him walk around, and then came back and said, okay, how much more can you, what is there any increase in range of mobility? And lo and behold, there was something slightly more. And he had this huge smile on his face. That was repeated over and over again, I would say, for 2 weeks. So he probably did it 8, 9 times over that 2 week period. And lo and behold, guess what? We have this. We have lots and lots of those cases, especially for people over the age of 70. I didn't know this thing even existed, that some men who have shoulder injuries, I had no idea that in the shower they would bend down, you know, and then wash their hair because they couldn't raise their arms above their head. They couldn't wash their hair. What they had to do is bend down at, nearly 90 degrees because there, in bending down, they could wash their hair. I didn't know this existed before. I had no appreciation for this human limitation. Those people, we did the exact same thing. Cycles, legs, and then try to move the the shoulder right up to the point where there would be pain. We don't want there to be any pain, just right above there. And lo and behold, it takes a relatively short amount of time to see a significant improvement in mobility. So my answer is a very confident yes. Um, Next question is, would I see better results to engage muscles versus not to engage muscles? Yes, you would see better results to engage the muscles versus not to engage the muscles. Um, what I do is, because I walk and swim, I like to use KAATSU when I'm very sedentary, because this is the time I'm not engaging my muscles. And in my opinion, what better time to engage my muscles, what better time to improve my vascularity than when I'm just sitting and working. I'm not thinking about KAATSU. I'm just working. I'm focused on what I'm doing, but I'm getting the benefit of exercise, of increased vascularity, of increased hormonal production. And that in itself is helping me maintain a muscle mass at my age. Next question is, I'm 70 and would like to do wind sprints, but don't want to wear the bands while I'm doing so. Would it be better to do cycles before or afterwards? Definitely afterwards. You could do it after, I'm sorry, definitely before. So at the age of 70 and you want to do wind sprints, we want your legs, we want your entire cardiovascular system to be as prepared as possible. To be prepared means, and we all warm up in order to prepare our muscles for either casual movement or, in your case, rapid movement. And so I would do the KAATSU on my arms first, at least 2 cycles, probably 3, because you're not moving as your arms are just locked in position. You're doing wind sprints as your arms are being pumped. Then I would go to my legs. I would definitely do several cycle sets on my legs, including walking, including any kind of stretching that you do. Then you could take them off. And this is another relatively unknown point of KAATSU, is that we did a test many, many years ago, and we found out that the human growth hormone and adrenaline spikes 12 minutes after removal of the bands. So if you're doing wind sprints and you do all this kind of warm-up KAATSU cycle activity before, you and you take off the bands, you're spiking physiologically, or I'm sorry, you're peaking physiologically at the 12-minute mark after you take off the bands. And so I would actually do this, remove the bands, and do my wind sprints within that 12-minute window. Um, the next question is, since you can only use two KAATSU bands at a time instead of four, I think I read somewhere that it's suggested to start with arms first and then legs. Also, when you do session cycles, is it suggested to do a lower intensity first and then go to a stronger intensity? Or is it fine to start at the strongest setting? Do you gain more benefit from a more stronger intensity? Can you suggest me a routine for general longevity and health? Okay, lots of questions there. So A, you only use two COTS bands either on your arms or your legs. General principle, always hold true to that. Two, um, if possible, it's always better to start with your arms and then go to your legs. And why is that the case? And we've done lots and lots of these testing. So people say, well, that's just what you do. No, we remember with Dr. Sato, with Dr. Nakajima, with all the physicians and physiologists that we worked with, it was in Japan. They do things very, very deliberately for very, very specific reasons. But in the experimental stage, we, it's an open slate. So we didn't know the benefit of doing arms first and then legs, or legs first and then arms, or only arms or only legs. So this was a decade-long process to figure out the optimal use of KAATSU. So we figured out that using the arms first is the best way to actually start this signaling process between the lactate buildup of the upper body and the release of hormones through the pituitary gland and the insulin growth factor, and a variety of other a cascade of events in the body. And so what happens is we found out that arms are the most efficient way to start KAATSU and then go to legs. Now, that being said, there are some people who just don't like to do arms, and there are many of them. And there's some people who just enjoy doing KAATSU on their legs, and there are many of them. In this cases, they go straight to the legs, and that is their chosen route. We're explaining the optimal route. Then um, we do suggest that you start at the lower pressure. And why is that? Your vascular tissue is truly a pliable piece of your body. And like anything, when you wake up in the morning and you've been totally flat or on your side throughout the evening, your body is generally not as limber or as active as it was later in the day. Your body needs that gradual waking up period. It needs to warm up. And having a low pressure cycle, then gradually increasing the medium high is the best way for an optimal KAATSU session. In terms of what is better, a low pressure or a high pressure, the typical American mindset, a competitive athlete, is the harder the better, the longer the better, the more intense the better. And that is not the case with KAATSU. The case with KAATSU is the most appropriate is better. When you first start KAATSU, the most appropriate for every human is the low pressure. The most appropriate pressure for some people may be only low, for some people it may be medium, and for some people it may be high. We only know that by a variety of factors. We only know that what is the exercise that you're trying to do? What is the movement that you're doing and why? Do you have an injury? Do you have a rehab? Do you have a frozen shoulder? Are you undergoing a total replacement? Are you doing wind sprints? Are you trying to gain muscle? So all of these questions add up to what is the most appropriate pressure, not the highest pressure, but the appropriate pressure. So for example, A high pressure on your biceps may be not appropriate when you're working on your chest. A high pressure on your legs may not be appropriate when you're doing, I don't know, stretching or hurdles or something other. So the most appropriate pressure is based on what your goals are, how long you're doing it, what your repetitions, uh, what is your age, how long have you been doing KAATSU? And so you compile all this information together and you get your most appropriate pressure. Now, generally, over time, the amount of pressure that your body can withstand or bear will gradually get higher and higher. But at some point, there is a limitation what your body can do. You can only push it so far. With KAATSU, you can push it farther than you can without KAATSU, but you can still only push it so far. Um, so what would I suggest as a routine for general longevity and health? Um, I can tell you what Dr. Sato, the inventor of KAATSU, does. He's 76 years old. Um, the man is incredibly fit. People always assume that he lifts massive amounts of weights, and he does not lift massive amount of weights. He lifts, if he's using a weight machine, he's literally putting the pin in the first plate, not a stack of plates. If he's doing some sort of exercise, he's using the barbell. He's not putting massive amounts of weights there. But what he is doing, he's doing lots of cut cycles a day. He's doing it in the morning, he's doing it in the afternoon, and he's doing it in the evening. If he is looking to build muscle, he's doing his movements very deliberately with a uh, with a slow count down, a slow count up, while he's contracting his muscle. But there are other days that he works on, let's say, the Stairmaster, and he's working on his own cardiovascular fitness. Here, he's moving his legs rather quickly on a Stairmaster. He typically does 400 steps on his legs to begin. He puts the bands tight enough so at the 400th step, he's totally gassed. He waits, in this case, 20 to 30 seconds, and then continues the Stairmaster. Again, after about, I don't know, 100 to 150, he's totally gassed and he stops for 20 seconds. Does it again. So there are days that he's working on his cardiovascular system. There's days that he's working on his triceps and biceps and deltoids and pecs. Um, that is his form of enjoyment. He enjoys weightlifting, but his longevity focus is on the numerous cut cycles that he's doing in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. It's the cut cycles, whether you're doing something intense like lifting weights or something like when Dr. Sato and I have a meeting, we're across the table from one another and his machine is going on and my machine is going on. And it could be an hour discussion. We take it off, we make sure we're well hydrated and continue the discussion. Go out to lunch, come back to the office, and we have a continued discussion as we slap the bands on again. So the general rule of KAATSU for longevity is to do many cut cycles consistently. Doesn't have to be 2 hours, it doesn't have to be an hour, but if you can get in 20 to 30 minutes of cut cycles every day, that will help you enjoy a long and healthy life. Um, Next question is I'm 70 years old. I want to do KAATSU for muscle strength and endurance. How many cycles should I do? Um, I've answered this in various forms previously. And so warm up with 1 to 2 to 3 cycles on your arms and your legs both times. You can retighten the bands after that you've done 1, 2, or 3 cycles. always start on low, move your muscles slowly and deliberately, and contract your muscles as you're doing whatever exercise you're doing. That's for strength and size. For endurance, you want to go at a higher pace. Now, higher pace doesn't mean sprinting. It just means not this deliberate slow movement. In Dr. Sato's case, he likes the Stairmaster for his endurance. In my case, um, if I'm doing endurance for with KAATSU, um, in the in a pool with bands on my legs, kicking. If I'm on dry land, I'm walking. And so in these cases, it depends, I can I swim various distances and I walk various distances. Whatever I do, a portion of that is done with COTS bands on my legs. Um, Sometimes let's see, this morning I did my COTS on my legs for about 40 minutes. So, but I didn't start at 40 minutes. I started probably like 3 or 4 minutes. I didn't even get through a full cycle the first time I used COTS on my legs. But then I gradually increased over the decades. Um, Next question is, can I wear the COTS bands below the continuous glucose monitor and use it that way? We would not recommend that. So, I don't wear a continuous glucose monitor, but it's generally, up in this area here, which means that your COTS bands would be right in the middle of your bicep, and that don't do that. Not necessary. Just if you have your continuous glucose monitor on one arm, use the bands on your other arms, but do bilateral exercises. Then when you flip, you can put the continuous glucose monitor on the other arm, but still do the bilateral movements. Does KAATSU move lymph? So we've got the vascular system and we've got the lymphatic system. Um, we're definitely modifying the blood in the limbs. We've not done any studies that prove that the lymph is being impacted, although it would seem to be the case. But everything I've stated has been scientifically and medically proven at the University of Tokyo Hospital and out at Dr. Sato's clinic. But we've never actually done a test to uh, clearly demonstrate to the scientific community and medical community that KAATSU is moving lymph, although we assumed to be the case. We just never, that has not been any of our focus, primarily because we did all of our research with cardiologists, and we were more concerned about can people with cardiac issues, meaning people with heart attacks, strokes, stent, any kind of heart disease, can they do KAATSU safely? So we didn't do any of our research with the lymphatic system. So I don't state anything that we haven't proven before. We have data, so I'm going to have to say no. Although, it does make sense, but we don't know. Next question is, my 41-year-old healthy son has been bulging veins in his legs. Any contraindication? So it sounds like he has varicose veins, I'm assuming. And, people get varicose veins or have varicose veins for various reasons. He also could just be maybe a very dedicated cyclist or runner. Um, and so um, there's no reason not to do KAATSU unless, you know, um, I don't know, does he have a vascular surgeon? Does he have any other health issues? But again, if we look at KAATSU, our general principles. Put the bands on snugly, not tightly. Never use the bands to occlude or cut off blood supply. Always use the KAATSU cycle mode. So pressure on for 30 seconds, pressure off for 5 seconds. Always start often low. Um, these should not be contraindications for bulging veins in his leg. But again, there may be some underlying medical reason which I'm not aware of, and I couldn't comment unless he were my patient, and I'm not a physician anyway. So the best thing to do is if you have a KAATSU equipment already, or you do want to consult with your physician or his physician, then the physician would need to know what KAATSU is, and we can provide you with that information. Just email us at info@kaatsu.com. Next question is, what is one finger pressure? So one finger pressure, I don't have any bands near me. Here we go. So a one finger pressure, and I'm gonna actually, you should always use the bands over clothing, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna roll up my sleeve here. And the band should go, oops, here we go. The band should go in that area between the bicep and your shoulder and above your tricep. So in that area, you want to put the band. And what I mean by one finger pressure, so I have the band on in that area between the bicep and the shoulder. I could put one finger, I could shove it in there, and it can have one finger in between the band and the skin. But two fingers or three fingers, I couldn't fit three fingers, and I couldn't fit two fingers in there. I could fit one finger, but not two. That's what I mean by one finger pressure. So let's see, I put this band on with one finger. Um, we say one finger tightness, not necessarily one finger pressure. So one finger tightness, one finger tightness. And then if I look, the lightning isn't very good, but for my naked eye here, I could see already the color differentiation between one and the other. And then if I sort of do this, I can see the greater vascularity in the arm that has the band on. So we got a pinkening up. Um, so that's what we have. Next question is, with cancer comes angiogenesis that I don't want. Is that appropriate to use KAATSU if you have cancer? Um, uh, you don't have to use KAATSU if you have cancer. Now, we have many patients who use KAATSU who have cancer. Angiogenesis does occur with those patients, including my father, who, I explained earlier, is 90 years old and had lung cancer. Um, uh, I think you may be, again, I'm not an oncologist, but we do work with some oncologists. And I think there's a difference between the angiogenesis that I'm talking about that occurs in the brain, that occurs in the limbs, and the angiogenesis that would feed the tumorous cells. Um, so, um, but I'm not qualified to talk about this as relates to cancer. So I'll just leave you with, we have patients with prostate, lung, leukemia, um, breast, um, uh, pancreatic, skin, and a handful of other cancers who are consistent KAATSU users. Consistent meaning at least once a day, um, using KAATSU for its benefits. But if you're worried about angiogenesis, and you do have cancer, whether you're in remission or not, there's, you know, please don't use KAATSU. We never want to push KAATSU to anybody who has any inkling of worried or concerned. But if your oncologist would like more information from us, we are very happy to provide that to them and to you. Next question is, I have pain in my inner ankle area and inner portion of my front knee area. Will KAATSU help heal these injuries? What type of protocols would you recommend, and when do you use the bands while exercising, walking outside? Do you tend to put it on low intensity? I do find it kind of hard to a brisk walk when it's at its maximum intensity. Lots of questions there. Um, but I want to focus on the last comment, which is I find it kind of hard to do a brisk walk when it's on its maximum intensity. Absolutely. 100%. We have had NFL players, we've had NBA players, Major League Baseball players, Olympic medalists say the exact same thing. Soldiers, you name it, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers. Uh, this KAATSU is difficult, even going on a walk. This is why we always recommend starting at low. Low is the place where everybody from a Navy SEAL to Olympic gold medalist should start. Doesn't necessarily mean you end there, but you certainly should start there. You start there, and what other things? So start there. Um, your other questions is you have a pain in your inner ankle area and inner portion of your front knee area. Um, Before you go on your walk, I would do anywhere from 3 to 6 cycle sets absolutely every day without a question. If I had pain in my ankle and knee area and I had a COTS unit, I would be doing this when I wake up, and I would be doing this when I go to prior to going to bed every single day with COTS cycle. Um, uh, the exercises you should do are the exercises that a physical therapist would recommend to you. Because I don't know exactly the injuries that you have, I will defer the exercises you do to a physical therapist who knows you and your injuries. So whatever exercises they have recommended you to do, I would do those with the KAATSU bands on in the cut cycle mode, starting in the low pressure, without a doubt. Um, uh, you can actually also use when you're out walking and exercising, um, but you don't have to use maximum pressure. You can start off with low. If you want to go to medium and gradually, let me say, I don't know, do a finisher power walk in 5 minutes, and you want to go at a high pressure because you want to push yourself, great, but that's tough what you're doing. But I would definitely continue to do the cut cycles at least once a day, and I would do it twice a day. And I would do it while I'm sitting down, relaxing, watching TV, reading, working, whatever you're doing, uh, in addition to whatever physical exercises that your therapist has recommended. Um, The next question is, the leg bands slide down my leg unless I make them tight. Do I tighten more to keep them in place so I can walk about? Yes. So what you should do is sit down, never put the bands on while you're standing up. Sit down in a relaxed position, put your bottom at the end of a chair, then tighten the bands to a one finger tightness. Tighten the other band on the other leg to a one finger tightness. Then continue sitting down and do at least one, preferably two or three cut cycle sets on low. Then manually retighten the bands. You will be able to find you can retighten the band even tighter. Then go ahead and continue whatever exercise or movement that you're doing. The bands will not slip down your leg once you do that retightening after you've done a few cut cycle sets. Um, Next question is, when would you use the COTS constant pressure versus the COTS cycle mode? COTS constant pressure in in my case as a 63-year-old, you know, average Joe, I'd never use it, to be honest with you. Now, if I were, let's say, practicing on my golf strokes, if I were into jujitsu, if I were a baseball player, if I were doing any very specific movement, um, and that includes any kind of specific rehabilitation movement, after I do a sufficient number of cut cycle sets, then I would do a cuts constant at the appropriate pressure, doing a very specific movement. But that movement would not last much more than 10 minutes at most. Um, I know a lot of people like the feel of the cuts constant pressure, but the benefits come from the pressure on, pressure off. If you need and enjoy the feeling, the emotional sense of fatigue and work with the constant pressure, I would do a very focused finisher set with the constant pressure. I don't know. Maybe you want to do some push-ups, or maybe you want to do some um, bicep curls or whatever, or leg presses, etc., as a finisher to a workout. Or you're just practicing your tennis stroke, your golf stroke. Um, Maybe you are a sniper. Maybe you are an archer. And in these cases, um, uh, I know when we were working with some of the archers, I'd never seen an archery contest until I went to the Olympics, and I realized that a lot of the archers stand around for a long time, just standing around in a stressful situation, using the COTS bands on your legs and the constant pressure prior to, or I'm sorry, after doing the COTS cycle seems to me a reasonable application of the COTS constant pressure. Next question. I think we're three-quarters of the way done. Um, I have a cut cycle 2.0 device. I seldom sit down when doing legs because I'm concerned that the additional pressure on the bands will damage them. Is this correct? If you sit down gently, it should damage them. If you sit down sort of and plop down in your on your chair, and literally like this, just plopping down, yes, your body weight suddenly coming down on an inflated um, band will burst the band, just like if you sat down on a balloon, because that inner um, air bladder of the bands is like a balloon. And if you have a sudden weight crushing the inflated bands, it will burst. So if you do sit down, just sit down very gently. And a good thing to work on always, myself included, with the COTS bands on our legs, if we're sitting down, is actually to sit not slouched, not with your back against your chair, but up straight with your shoulders back and a straight spine with the bands on your legs, with your bottom not quite off the chair. Here you're working on your core in addition to having the benefit of the COTS bands going pressure on, pressure off. Next question. If I'm doing 6 arm cycles in a day, is it better to do all 6 together or split them up 3 and 3, or does it not matter? To be honest, I don't know the physiological differences between those two. Um, I would guess it's probably better to split them up 3 and 3. Um, but that's just a hunch. I don't know physiologically, and how we typically test is we would test a bunch of biomarkers through blood draws. Um, and we haven't done that yet. We haven't tested 6 cycles versus 3 and 3 cycle sets. But my hunch, do three at one time and 3 another would be more beneficial. Just a hunch. Next question. My cut cycle 2.0 pump no longer works. How to get it fixed? Um, um, cut cycle, just for people who don't know, this is a product we made in 2015. So we're coming up on 10 years. It sort of makes sense if you've been using your KAATSU that the pump no longer works. You know, it's rated at, I forgot the number of cycles, but you could return it to us. Contact KAATSU or info@kaatsu.com. Explain your situation, and you can send it back. Um, we do have, even though we manufactured them 10 years ago, I'm actually looking at about 12, maybe 13 um, Cycle 2.0 devices that we still have left. So, and they all still work, and we scavenge them for various parts. So you can send it to us. The info@kaatsu.com will send you the appropriate address. Um, can one do more than 20 to 30% 1 rep max when using weights? Returning to KAATSU C3 use. I work out regularly. I am 74. Also, is there any benefit if doing regular workouts? Okay, so let's see. Um, can one do more than 20 to 30% 1 rep max when using weights? Okay, so I think this question is, if I'm using the CUTS product, can I lift more than 20 to 30% of my 1 repetition max? So let's say you you're lifting your 1 rep max is 50 pounds. So 20% of 50 pounds is 10%, 10 pounds. And her question is at the age of 74, but it doesn't matter if you're 24. If you're using the KAATSU products, equipment, can you lift more than 10 pounds? Yes, you can move more than 10 pounds. You can use 20 pounds. You can use 30 pounds. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get more benefit, but you can lift, you can't apply heavier weight. Um, but the question is, why? Are you assuming that heavier weights with KAATSU will provide more benefit? And that is it. That is not the case. If you want to use heavier weights, you can use KAATSU, take off KAATSU, and then lift heavier weights. If your goal is to lift heavy, workout with more weights, then lift with more weights. If you want to use KAATSU concurrently with your weight training, then use lighter weights. So sometimes we get the two modalities mixed up. So you can use KAATSU with your regular workouts. We want to understand what your goal is. If your goal is, let's say, even at the age of 74, you're a master's power lifter, great. Then we want to see you lift as much weight as possible. There are benefits to using KAATSU in your workout, but there are also benefits of not using KAATSU in your workouts. Because you have KAATSU doesn't mean you have to use KAATSU in everything you do. And conversely, if you have KAATSU, you could use it for very specific purposes throughout the year for very specific goals. You could use KAATSU all the time as a warm-up modality. You could use KAATSU all the time as the previous question, as a killer finish um, modality. So I think the best thing to do in your case is to ask your question, give us your goals. What is your goal? Very Be as very specific as possible. Um, and and we can help shape a optimized KAATSU program for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you use KAATSU throughout your entire workout. It could be used KAATSU in segments. And this is what we do often for professional teams, for Olympic athletes, for performers of various sort. And that includes musicians who have to give who frequently give concerts of 2, 3 hours in length. They have to be cardiovascularly fit enough to do it. So they're not always using their KAATSU in their preparation for their concerts. They're using KAATSU in different segments throughout the year, both their quote off season and in season usage. So the more uh, specific situations and information you give us, the more specific information that we can recommend for additional guidance. Next question. As a trainer, how do I get liability insurance? Um, the liability insurance is available through various uh, yeah, brokers, insurance brokers. We used to work with HMBD, um, and I don't. And before that, it was Tokyo Marine. Um, I, I guess as CEO, I should know this answer, but I don't know specifically. So if you send us a question, what state you're in, how you use it, etc., then we can probably find the answer for you. Next question. On a recovery week from full weight training without KAATSU, how often can it perform the slow reps for upper and lower with the KAATS B2? Is daily okay, and should I alternate upper and lower KAATSU resistance days? So the question is, he's doing a full weight training workout without KAATSU um, during his recovery week. And the question is, how often can I perform slow repetitions for upper and lower body with B2? Yes, you could do that daily. And should I alternate upper and lower KAATSU resistance days? Yes, you can do that too. So using it daily is recommended, and alternating upper lower KAATSU resistance days is also recommended. In fact, you doing a rotation of different exercises. It doesn't necessarily have to be all upper or all lower. It could be some, chest versus shoulders versus arms versus core, whatever. You know, having a rotation of different focus of your workouts is always good. If you would like an example of what Dr. Sato, the 76-year-old KAATSU inventor, does on a weekly basis, we have that available for your reference. We have, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 more questions. I'm having shoulder surgery on Friday, arthroscopic rotator cuff repair. How soon can I use KAATSU after this procedure, and will it help me heal quickly? Um, Again, speak with your physician, your surgeon, If there are no complications, then you could use that almost immediately. I would say the next day. Our standard recommendation is within 72 hours. Um, and it, if you're using the cut cycle, which is again creating this shear stress against the vascular walls that's leading to her hormonal response, um, this will help you heal more quickly than not. I've noticed that normally persistent ankle pain goes away since using KAATSU. Can this be due to the venous pressure keeping those capillaries flooded? Um, are there, is it because the tissue is more oxygenated? Um, so this individual had a persistent ankle pain that goes away since she started to use KAATSU. And her question is, why does this occur? Um, it's occurring for a few reasons. One, which you mentioned, is that the capillaries are getting engorged, they are becoming more elastic, and the tissue is becoming more oxygenated. In addition, when you do KAATSU, you do produce beta endorphin. Uh, Beta endorphin is a pain mitigator. It's often you hear of it being described as the runner's high after a marathon. Yes, they're hurting, but they're very um, their mood is elevated. This is the beta endorphins being kicked in. So, in addition to the physiological action of the capillaries being engorged, the capillaries being increased, and therefore the tissue down there being more oxygenated with better blood circulation, you also have things like beta endorphins, which are a pain mitigator that's helping reduce that ankle pain. So I'm happy, very happy for you. Can I use KAATSU if I have chronic fatigue? So CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. We did a test and yes, it can most definitely help. But this is a situation where you have to be very extraordinarily gentle with the use of KAATSU, meaning you're not doing what these previous questions are, lifting weights or going for a walk, etc. You're literally sitting down or lying down, putting the bands on, not with a one finger tightness, but really putting it much more loosely at a three finger tightness. So I can get three fingers in there. You want it to be very, very um, conservative in your pressure, both in the manual placing of the bands on your arms or legs, and also the amount of pressure that you're putting in these bands. Um, you're not doing much more than one cut cycle set a day, at least for, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks. We did have people with chronic fatigue syndrome test KAATSU. Um, it ranged. They were enthusiastic for KAATSU Promise. Some of them reacted very well. Some of them reacted very poorly. But then, upon further investigation of why they reacted poorly to KAATSU, is because they simply did too much. They did KAATSU while they were using uh, very light weights, or they did KAATSU as they're doing some kind of movement. That was just exacerbating the problem. We want you to be relaxed. We want you to be well hydrated. We want you to use it with very gentle and very conservative pressure. And most of all, be very patient. And the results have been fantastic. Next question is, what are your thoughts on using KAATSU while using a, was it pulse, PEMF mat simultaneously? I am not an advocate of using KAATSU equipment simultaneously with any other equipment. It's not that I don't believe other equipment works because they do. so the PMF, uh, PEMF mat, they're quite popular. People lie on them, and they give a pulsation of electromagnetic frequency, I think it is. Um, Very nice technology. Use those mats as you have been doing. It works on a different system in the body, just like people use cryotherapy, red light therapy, and various other kinds of therapies. Um, they all work on different systems: the nervous system, the lymphatic system, the vascular system, etc. Um, Focus on KAATSU for what KAATSU does. Focus on what PMF mats do for what it does. Don't don't confuse the two. It's sort of like if you want to drink something, do you take a hot cup of tea and put cold water in it? So don't enjoy the hot tea for its flavor, its aroma, its antioxidants inside, etc. Take the water for its hydration, its cooling effects, etc. So it, you whatever the modality is, we always recommend not to mix the two. Do them separately, do them at different times. They could be one after another, but do them separately. Um, I noticed that my battery is gonna, sorry. Okay. We've got, I think, three more questions. Uh, Next question is for those with a continuous glucose monitor. Before putting on the continuous glucose monitor, I put on the band, loose but just for location. Then I put on the continuous glucose monitor about an inch or two below, away from the COTS armband. It is not interfered at all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that bit of advice. Just to repeat, for those with a continuous that use a continuous glucose monitor, before putting on the continuous glucose monitor, I put on the bands loose just to for location purposes. And then she puts or he puts on the continuous glucose monitor an inch or two below the Katsu armband. So if they put on the Katsu armband to in the right position, she'll put on the continuous glucose monitor below that point. Thank you for that advice and your experience. Um, Next question. You once had a map for discovering local Katsu trainers. Any intent on bringing back this service? Yes, we do. It's just one of the many things that our webmaster is working on. But I think what's the month? Yeah, we wanted to have it up before year end, and I think we'll get there in year end, but we're talking about October now. If you wanted uh, to know or be introduced to local COTS trainers, the best thing to do is email us at info@kots.com. Give us your city or state, and then we can send you out information on who the local trainer is. But hopefully we'll have this service back by year end. And last question, would using KAATSU bands with red light therapy provide a 1 + 1 = 3 type benefit? Do you know if using the bands plus focused red light on, say, knees, ankle, or elbow while relaxing, meditating, provide even faster healing benefits? Do you know if people have had success with these types of things? Lots of questions there. I have, I doubt that using KAATSU and red light therapy equals something that is analogous to 1 + 1 = 3. But I do know that using KAATSU and using red light therapy is done by a lot of people for additional benefit, whether it's 100% more, 10% more, 5% more. I'll leave them to discuss that, to make those claims. Um, we've had soldiers use the red light therapy often because they're in tremendous chronic pain and they're trying to layer on a variety of modalities to help, who literally help them sleep. Um, and many of them relax or meditate, read uh, right before bed while doing KAATSU and red light therapy. I know that to be the case. In fact, I'm writing a preface to a book for a Green Beret soldier who does that exact same thing for many benefits that he is long claimed for him. Now, he did take a bullet to the head, so, and he was in a coma for several months, so he was really bad off. And but he's been doing KAATSU for his particular rehabilitation. Um, if you would like more information on that, you can send us an email at info.com. We'll send you out. We actually did an interview with him uh, about his use of KAATSU. And I believe in the interview he does explain how he incorporates red light therapy with his rehabilitation from his horrific injury that he experienced in Afghanistan during a firefight with uh, Taliban, actually. So it's been 2 hours and 22 minutes. I thank the remaining 20 people who have stayed. Uh, it's been a long day. I thank you very much for your interest and your many, many questions. We recorded this. I know when we started, we had more than twice the number of people, but um, not everybody has 2 hours and 22 minutes to let time or patience to hear me talk. And I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for your use in KAATSU, for your belief in KAATSU. And again, if you have any questions, email us at info@kaatsu.com. So thank you very much and continue your KAATSU journey. Best wishes.